Making $1 million seems like the finish line when you're first starting out. But let me tell you something that most people won't. It's not that hard to make $1 million. It's harder to keep it. I made my first million before the age of 30, and I lost more than I care to admit. So in this video today, I'm going to share with you the 5 biggest lessons I learned after making and losing my first million. Because I don't want you to waste the time, the energy, and the peace of mind that I did. So let's talk about something they don't teach you in school. Lesson number 1, cash flow is king, vanity is expensive. When I first started making real money, I bought myself a BMW. Like most people, I was a victim of lifestyle creep. You make more money, you buy a nicer car. You make more money, you move in a fancy apartment. That BMW ended up costing me millions of dollars. Not in the actual price of it, but in the opportunities that I missed and the investments I could have made. It also ended up in the shop. Lots of maintenance, and I ended up driving a bunch of loaner cars. However, everyone said that I was successful. Meanwhile, when I bought my first triplex unit, no one cared. There wasn't a peep, no one chanted, because again, wealth is boring, wealth looks quiet. At the end of the day, when you look at it, all of the money that was invested in things that make me look rich, look successful, ended up costing me a fortune. If you look at Ben Mala, the famous YouTuber, and he goes in, he discusses buying luxury cars, he's in Bentley dealerships. He says, 1, he's never bought a new luxury car. And 2,
if you're making $50,000 a year, you should be driving a $10,000 car.
He also believes that if you're making $50,000 a year, you should buy a $10,000 car. If you're making $100,000 a year, you should buy a $20,000 car. When I was making the most money ever, I moved myself from Miami in a high-rise apartment to a $40,000 house that I paid cash for. Guess what? That apartment that people thought I was rich and I was making a lot of money versus the house, people said, why did you move to this area? Today, that house has made me more money that apartment ever has made. And at the same time, it's now an asset I've been able to pull from it and use it as a source of rental income. What I wish I had done differently was ignore the crowd, ignore the noise, ignore the things that make me feel rich, and double down on things that actually made me rich. Lesson number 2, don't mistake revenue for wealth. There are many times in my business where we hit 7 figures in income, and I thought that meant we were being profitable. But at the end of the day, making money and being profitable are 2 different things. We struggle with cash flow issues, slow customer payments, delays in the project, guys not finishing the work on time. We still had to order equipment, get materials out to the job sites, and reschedule crews regardless of whether or not that we got paid. There was one particular time where I struggled to make payroll that I remember because I almost brought a gun to work. And what happened was I was at the time about 23 employees. The majority of them were guys that were working on steel buildings, a lot of them with the face tattoos, skull and crossbones, the type, felony records, convictions, in and out of the system. So they weren't exactly easy pushovers and were people that took kindly to not receiving their monies. They were dependent on this money. And at the end of the day, they had families to feed and lives to take care of. So regardless of what happened in the field, whether the work was done or not, they didn't care. They just want to get paid. And at the end of the day, luckily for me, my mom was able to lend me the money that I needed to help me to make that payroll. And so we didn't turn into anything tragic. But it taught me a very important lesson. Revenue is vanity, profit sanity, cash is king. Know your numbers or they'll eat you alive. Lesson number 3, fundraising is a skill, not a favor. One of my biggest regrets was not knowing how to raise money sooner, not knowing how to ask for money, not knowing who to ask for money or what to say in order to get money to be able to execute on ideas, dreams, or a vision that I had. We live in America where it's a capitalist society. When you look at the 4 quadrants that Robert Kiyosaki talks about, you have the employee, the self-employed, the business owner, and the investor. Once you go from business owner to investor stage of your journey, you then want to use your additional capital to invest in opportunities for gaining additional wealth. But because I didn't know that principle, I wasn't able to take advantage of it. I saw a lot of real estate deals in Miami that I couldn't execute on and take advantage of because I did not know who to turn to, where to ask, or where to even start. Contrast that with my contracting journey and working with some of my more successful friends. They taught me how to get money and leverage it in order to grow and scale, because in order to grow and scale any type of organization, business, anything that you're starting, you're going to need resources. So when I started the government contracting journey, I knew how to borrow money, ask for money, leverage money, and that's where we started doing creative things like having banks and other organizations give us net 30 terms. Being able to leverage other people's credit, other people's capital, other people's letters of credit in order to grow and scale that business. So when I go back and I look back on that journey, if I had learned how to do that sooner, I would be in a much more favorable position 10 years, 15 years, 20 years later. We think that if we just work hard enough that someone will notice, but capital flows to people who ask for it. Lesson number 4, nobody's coming to save you. There was a time in my business journey where I ran out of money. Yeah, completely ran out of money, and I didn't have any resources. I didn't have any money in my bank account, and at the time I was working on a project, finishing it up down in Miami, and I remember this distinctly because it was all on me to figure out what to do. And I remember this project particularly because I had workers out there, I had machines, I had equipment, I had materials on the job site, I had people working every day, but I was flat broke in my bank account. And what I had to do in order to continue to keep that project going and to finish that project was I had to find creative ways to solve for this issue. And so one of the things that I did was I had someone that owed me some money. So I actually used their credit accounts with some of the vendors that they had for rental equipment. I called them up and I said, hey, my name is so-and-so. I'm working with this company. Can you send some machines out there to the job site to help me get this project finished? Yeah, it wasn't necessarily honest or truthful, but the fact that they owed me a lot of money and I knew that they had credit accessible, they couldn't pay me the cash they needed. So instead, I asked them to give me credit through some of their vendor credit relationships to continue having my project finished. I did that, and that floated me for 3 months of rental equipment. I then called another person that owed me capital, and I asked to use his credit lines. That floated me for another couple months of rental equipment. And then, because I kept working on future projects, I had won an additional contract that I promised a vendor that if he finished this contract for me without being paid, that I would give him more money on this next future contract. And so that bought me additional time from not having to pay them on this current project and allowed me to float that money that I had as leverage on this potential future contract. And again, because I'm a person of my word, I did pay them back on this future contract without having to have the cash flow on the current project. So, but at the end of the day, even though I was able to figure this out and do a lot of financial engineering, I learned a very important lesson, and it all falls on you. Now, the good thing about that is if you can figure it out and get through that as you start to grow as a person and start to develop, you start to understand different financial mechanisms and how you can solve these problems if you work hard enough and you think about it and you're creative and you start talking to people who've been there before. Then it teaches you how to come up with creative solutions for solving some of the most pressing problems that you may be facing. Lesson number 5, the million doesn't fix you, it exposes you. If you think that money will solve your problems, let me warn you, it just makes them louder. Why do you think that so many lottery winners who've been giving all this money end up going broke? Why are that so many people who win at those daytime shock shows, prizes, awards, free homes even, end up back at square one? If you're bad with 1,000 now, you'd be terrible with 1,000,000. If you're afraid to lead, a big team will break you. Your habits and discipline, if you don't have them under control, success will only create more stress. Jim Rohn has a famous saying, the reason why you want to set a goal to make $1,000,000 is not because of the $1,000,000, but because of the person that you have to become in order to receive that $1,000,000. So it's best you become that person today. Otherwise, if you get the money, you'll just lose it. And so we see that in so many examples of people. But when it comes to many of us entrepreneurs who have climbed up and achieved great things, but at the same time had great losses, we've learned a lot of habits and skills that we can then take with us into our next business, our next venture. You might have heard before, they say if you take all the money in the world, divide it amongst everyone evenly, that would go back to the same people. Why? Because we have developed the skills and those traits of discipline, saving, reinvesting the money, and deferred gratification that's needed in order to build real wealth. Keep this in mind. Money is a magnifier. If you want to keep it, become the person who can. I lost money, but these lessons help make me wealthy. Build boring wealth, own everything, master money math, learn to raise capital, and be the person that can handle it. Before I let you go today, if you're curious as how I built those businesses, I have this video right here, the 7 strategies I use to build real wealth. I hope this video today helped you save money and many mistakes. If this video made sense or resonate with you, hit the subscribe button because I'm not here to flex. I'm here to give you the blueprint I never had.